What's the strangest weirdest thing you've seen in someone else's house? First week freshman year, my new roommate and default best friend tells me we're going to a board game night somewhere. I figure frick it, I've got no new friends yet. Maybe this is a way to do it. So we go. It ends up being at some sort of church house, but that's fine I guess. We play some train board game and have an alright time with some people who only seem a little weird, but not enough to really throw me off. So the game wraps up and me and my roommate are about to go home when the pastor says, wait, you haven't seen the bathroom yet. You've got to see it. Everyone sees my bathroom. Okay, so we open the door and walk into this little bathroom where every single square inch of the walls, sink, toilet, ceiling, and floor are covered in Elvis memorabilia, posters, tickets, photos, albums, lyric sheets, everything you can imagine. And mounted above the toilet is a creepy, mostly realistic Elvis animatronic, singing head. Needless to say, this was discomfort I had never felt before. It was beyond being a fan or obsessive or any of that. It was really frightening. So we turn around to him holding a guest book for us to sign. Obviously I made up an email and phone number so he wouldn't email me or call me. And then my roommate, a devout Catholic, tells him he appreciates it but he's Jewish and he just wanted to come with me while I checked out their small group. That was a weird night. When I was little, I had two friends who had a trapeze in their living room. I loved playing at their houses. A functioning toilet against the wall in a bedroom. To be clear, there was no sink, which makes it way more disturbing convenient. This was many years ago. I had a friend in first grade and she was never allowed over to my house, still no idea why. But I visited her home once. It was a very tiny apartment with two closet-sized bedrooms. The one bedroom had a crib like what a baby half her size would sleep in. She told me that's where she slept. I found it quite odd and very disturbing even in my 6-year-old mind. I moved away the end of the school year so never found out more. I'm thinking she wasn't allowed over so she could never see that other people have a more comfortable life. I work in a job where sometimes I have to go deploy equipment in people's homes. I was doing a project where I had to set up some stuff in the kitchen of a very nice vacation rental, which was unoccupied due to the fact that this was February in northern Michigan. The whole thing was decked out to the nines in cutesy, wealthy grandma type decor, except for the kitchen. The only artwork in there was a painting of 3 fish with photorealistic dongs and testicles instead of tails, hanging above the stove so that it was the first thing you saw when you walked in. I have never been so disappointed that our project instructions forbade the photographing of property owners' belongings. My neighbor's living room was filled with ventriloquist dummies. She lived alone, and she looked to be about 60 years old. Keeping tens of cockroaches as pets in a box in their room. They weren't for feeding reptiles, they were actual pets being fed. This was a teenage friend many years ago. He apparently loved capturing insects like Pokemon. I did the window replacement on a big house in an expensive old area of town. It was lived in by an elderly lady until she passed. It was recent because all her things were still there. This place was a perfect time capsule of the 1960s. Each room had a different theme vibe and there were mannequins set up all wearing 60s clothing in every room in different scenarios. It was really bizarre. Kinda seemed like the lady was lonely or something. A storage room with hooks on the ceiling and floor. You found the adult playroom. I dated a girl whose grandfather once demolished an old medical building. The first time I went to her Sunday dinner at her grandparents' place, he just had a freaking human skull chilling on a shelf in his living room. When I was in high school, my mom came home from a garage sale with a coffin. It was a wooden antique from England. It was from the 19th century. It had screw holes in the top which lifted all the way off. The couple who sold it to her were getting rid of it because they disagreed about what purpose it should serve. The wife wanted to keep using it as a coffee table blanket storage and the husband wanted to turn it into a gun rack. My mom thought it was great as a coffee table, so my siblings and I spent the next few years asking our friends, would you like a blanket from the coffin while we watched TV? So yeah, high school was fun. Go mom, I would totally have bought that too. To a condo and they had a communal shower. You know, the kind you would see at the Inca, like 6 shower heads. I picture them having all their buddies over to take a shower together. Hundreds of those automatic Febreze sprays, like actual hundreds. I couldn't breathe inside the house. The house belonged to an old lady. The entire house was creepy AF. It was located right next to a shooting range and we had to interrupt every conversation because of gunshots. I didn't see mold, but it was probably under one of the thousands of lace curtains. Everything was covered with lace, even some of the Febreze sprayers. Did you ever figure out what they were trying to hide? I went to my friend Brian's house once for dinner and his mom set 4 places. One for me, one for Brian, one for herself, and the last one was for a doll with a cutout picture of Brian's dead grandmother's face taped to the doll's face. Very creepy. A framed picture of an egg. May I offer you an egg in these trying times? I cat sat for my neighbor once. Some kitty's medication was kept cold. When I opened the fridge to grab it, I noticed tub after tub of jello. Everything in the fridge was jello, like 40 tubs of it. Nothing else besides the medicine. Probably a special diet. That's all my boss could eat when he had diverticulitis. Let me walk you through a house I visited of an acquaintance's father. The living room had a collection of old death pose photos from random families. Had to be at least 50 because the wall was covered, and a curio cabinet of old Nazi memorabilia, including a Nazi china set. WTF. His bedroom had a like Alan laying on the bed just chilling. In the corner of the room sat a rocking chair with a lifelike replica of the mother from Psycho. Needless to say, I got the heck out of there and haven't been back since. Those Nazi china sets are really rare and special to collectors. My Filipino friend has this thing on his mantle. It's a chili pepper with a face that has nunchucks, which are themselves made out of 2 small chili peppers. I ask him what the frick is going on, but he just chuckles and tells me not to worry. My friend's main bathroom had a mirror with scratched in names and words covering the entirety of it. Also in that bathroom was a doorway, separated only by a sliding sheet, that led to a pitch black basement. All you could see from the top of the stairs was the stairs. I asked if I could use another bathroom. Holy but my friend had to have staged this house cause this was literally horror movie crap. When I started pulling into her driveway, a car nearly runs into me trying to get out. Didn't question it. After you get down the dark, narrow, mile-long, dirt driveway, surrounded entirely by very tall woods, you arrive at her farm. The main house is the first thing you see. Very dilapidated, which wasn't a deal breaker, but it was very quiet and unnerving. I guess not for me at the time. On the front porch was a realistic full-size doll of human. Several of its body parts were on the porch floor around the rocking chair it sat in. Let me note this was a freaking Christmas party. But nope. 2017 Stardust saw no threat. What the heck was I thinking? I'd definitely be the first idiot to die if my friend went rings on our asses. My best friend's mom is obsessed with chicken trinkets. I'm talking chicken pictures on plates, chicken pillows, porcelain chickens, pictures of chickens on blankets, ect. Everyone I know has just gotten used to it, but it's always funny watching someone new walk in. My mom is exactly the same but with owls. Our Christmas tree is owl themed this year. Pray for me, lads. One of my old best friends is a bit on the eccentric side. Instead of a dining table and chairs, he has a full corner booth and table recovered from an Applebee's that was either closing down or remodeling. It takes up the entire dining side of his kitchen. That's actually pretty legit. I got invited to an old friend's house that I knew in high school. Ran into him at the store, asked me if I was busy, which I wasn't, so I popped over. Hadn't seen him in around 8 years or so. Get into his room, and there's a life-sized rubber adult doll, think real doll style, dressed up to look like his ex from around the same period. Hair was dyed, makeup was done, clothes all hand selected from local thrift shops to perfectly match and preserve her style from literally a decade ago. Crap was fricked up. I noped out after a half hour and have been avoiding him ever since. Reminded me of some serial killer fetish or something. My aunt has a framed photo of Meryl Streep in her computer room. I was very perplexed and asked my cousin if she noticed the rogue Meryl, and she casually said, "Oh yeah, I told mom that her and Meryl Streep looked alike, and then I guess she printed that out." You go, Aunt Yvonne. I upvoted because Aunt Yvonne sounds like she has a good sense of humor. I wish I could give a second upvote for the phrase the rogue Meryl. My last boss was a 42-year-old white, southern, wealthy businessman. He had a framed picture in his living room of Antoine Dodson, the hide yo kids hide yo wife dude. That guy memes. My friend and his family bred and raised cockatiels. For some reason, when one would die, they would put it in saran wrap and store it in their freezer. I found this out by randomly discovering a half dozen of them one day when I was digging for ice cream. He thought it was the most rational thing in the world, and as a person that doesn't raise or breed specific animals, I didn't second guess him. Only in hindsight did I start to truly think it was freaking weird. Freezing them until the ground thaws for a proper burial does make the most sense, but they must have kept forgetting. Not surprising considering his parents' age. There were at least a half dozen that fell out of the pile. Apparently cockatiels live for 20 years and to have so many dead ones is weird. While I can't speak to that specifically, I will say that the timing does somewhat bear out. His parents were fairly old. We were about 11 at the time of the story, and my friend was the youngest of 4 children. His oldest sister was about 20 years older than him. The family had been breeding cockatiels for quite a long time. I doubt very much that they were saving the bodies for anything in particular like a vet examination or to donate to science. They just weren't like that. My friend had a Velveeta box, but it was the exercise box. It had one end cut so that it was a bit like a hinge lid, and could be opened and closed snugly. He would scoop a bird out of the cage, pop it in the box, close the lid, and then hold it at about a 45-degree angle. The bird would be inside trying to run up the slope but not getting anywhere because its claws couldn't grip the cardboard. It just made a constant scratching as it scrambled frantically in there. When I asked him about it, he said that they needed exercise to stay healthy, just like anything else. This is another weird thing I never questioned him about again, because I wasn't a breeder or had any kind of special knowledge. For the record, he wasn't sadistic with it or anything, that I could tell at least. He genuinely believed that it was for the bird's good. Dead cockatiel. Do not eat. Opened the fridge of an apartment I moved into. There was a gigantic pig sculpture that had a big smiling face and, guessing, Chinese characters on it. Asked my new roommates what it was. They both replied, "Don't ask." We called it the fridge pig. My grandma used to keep a pig sculpture in her fridge. I never knew why though. So my mom and I stopped at what was advertised as a garage sale in my neighborhood. They had a bunch of kids stuff in the front yard and we were looking for stuff for my son, so we decided to check it out. But when we got close it was all in really bad shape. No big deal, we think. Let's go inside. As we're walking in we're greeted by a person we assume to be the owner of the house. He's wearing black pants and a tiny leather vest with no shirt underneath. I see this now for the red flag that it was. He welcomes us and tells us everything in the house is for sale. Everything. Look anywhere you want, he says. Open all the drawers. Look in all the closets. Okay, cool. Definitely doesn't say anything about there being anything weird in the house. First things first, the house is kind of crappy trashed, but still looks relatively normal. Only obviously weird thing is that they have a giant TV playing a crazy looking horror movie. Super scary and gory. He says the TV is for sale too, so maybe they are just playing whatever's on to show it works. We look around and don't find anything good and decide to go upstairs. Once upstairs we proceed into the first bedroom. Looks pretty normal. Kind of small and furnished for a kid. Nothing we want. Okay, move on. The next bedroom looks like someone is sleeping in the bed. Oops, sorry. But no, it is a full-sized human horror prop of a very realistic zombie woman, and oh frick, in the corner is a very realistic prop of half a human crawling across the floor. These things looked so real, guys. We're like, Jesus, what the frick? These people are serious about Halloween. We go to the next room and it is set up like a full-on dungeon with torture equipment and fake humans and piles of Barbie heads for some reason. We are seriously freaked out and decide to leave as quickly and quietly as possible. As we're walking out of the dungeon room, a woman comes out of the other creepy room. We look at each other, wide-eyed and silent, and all proceed out the front door to separately process our trauma. Really thought the ending to this was gonna be that the sellers weren't the real owners of the home and it was some revenge plot. Growing up I had a friend with 3 different framed pictures of spoons in his house. Found out later his dad liked the room. Dead tomato plants. Apparently he didn't want his garden to end and thought he could keep them alive in the living room. They were dead though. They dead. Decorative prison bars in the dining room. I went to an open house and part of the wall had been cut out between the dining and living room and replaced with metal prison bars. The owners said their daughter was an art student. My high school best friend's parents had a petrified walrus dog on their fireplace mantle. They had a large moose head with amber glass eyes mounted high above their fireplace mantle. As I've noted on Ask Reddit some time ago, there were electric bulbs behind the amber glass eyes that lit up, making the moose look like it was agitated and about to charge. That's freaking awesome. Professor at my now wife's university had students over for meals every now and then. His wife was a belly dancer. Life-sized painting of her naked was prominently hung in the dining room. Conversation starter indeed. Nice tea. Pass the potatoes. Oh god. Calling myself out here. When I moved out for college I had, still have, actually, this set of nail clippers with a little built-in receptacle to catch your nail clippings. Really handy. But obviously you have to dump the nails out once in a while. Decided to clip my nails before bed one night. Clipper was full. Dumped old nails into an empty bowl in my room because I didn't have a garbage can and was too lazy to go out. We met up with friends at school the next day. New friends. I was from out of town. And they all decided to come over later. I forgot all about the bowl full of nails, but of course it was the first dank thing they saw when they entered my room. I tried to explain but it just seemed to make things worse. Still makes me cringe. They were probably disturbed by the lack of milk. Wife's grandmother has a 11x16 framed holographic pic of crucified Jesus complete with blood and crown of thorns. Creepiest part, it's in the bathroom and the eyes follow you. It's to prevent masturbation. New neighbors just moved in. My roommates and I offered to help them with furniture. Their townhouse was next to us and their front door was open, so we walked in, introduced ourselves and made the offer. They said to come back in about an hour. We go back when they come over, ask us to help now. When we walk in the living room, lo and behold, there's a TV hooked up with a home movie porno playing with the wife riding the husband. Needless to say, this was over 30 years. Still friends with them to this day. Update. Okay, turns out our neighbors were swingers. This in the late 80s. It was a somewhat invitation to see if we were interested in joining them. My roommates and I were in our early 20s. The couple next door, in their 30s. My one roommate did get involved with them a few times. Fast forward to the present. I'm still friends with the couple, as is my former roommates. Error CXTV 5867 parsing text null x66. At my grandma's house growing up, my cousins and I thought it would be funny to leave a single Dorito on a dresser upstairs because my grandma couldn't go upstairs and only used it for guests. That Dorito sat there for 5 years amongst these porcelain knickknacks. We never disturbed it and always laughed about it. I think the most disturbing part was that it never went bad or brought in pests. Oh, it definitely went bad, but a dry chip in a cool, dry place is going to remain looking pretty much the same. They find 5,000-year-old bread in Egyptian tombs all the time. Looks fine. Is definitely petrified all to heck. A man in a hospital bed without a nose. I was around 9 when we were invited to the backyard. Everyone was running through the house and I was trying to keep up. The sight of that poor man stopped me in my tracks. I knew a lady who lost her nose to cancer when I was little. She had a pretty cool deal going with Virginia Tech. She was a model for students learning to make and fit prosthesis, so she always had nice noses for free. I used to do housework for an older gay man. His house was filled with large, artsy B&W pictures of young, very fit naked men, dongs showing, carrying naked babies. It was like Ann Geddes meets a homoerotic Calvin Klein commercial from the early 90s. To be clear, the men weren't doing anything physical with the babies, but it was waff. My mill keeps anything she finds that is shaped like a heart. Seashells, pieces of glass, rocks, potato chips. Yes, potato chips. They sit on a shelf in the living room. Frick swing. It was just right out in the open in the basement. And they were not the kind of people you wanted to imagine in a frick swing. I worked with a guy that would just put a potted plant in the frick swing when people came over. Like, That's an unusual place for a potted plant, hanging low in the middle of the room, sitting in your frick swing. A tiger skin coat that was her father's. I wore it and it was heavy. Far out. In college I rented a very old but huge duplex with 6 of my best friends. After we moved in we discovered that while the basement had a concrete slab in the laundry area, most of the basement had an exposed, dirt floor instead of foundation. One area of the basement was divided off with sheets and tarps into a few makeshift rooms. Some of them had furniture or mattresses. The largest sheet room in the center of the basement was about 15 x 15 feet. In the center of this room was a pit about 4 feet in diameter and about 4-5 feet deep, dug into the dirt below the house. In the pit there was a variety of refuse, candles, broken bongs and a shopping cart. Stuffed into the cart was a mannequin, its body parts twisted and contorted to fit inside the space of the cart. This became known as the cult room. Also, the house had a 3rd floor, but since there was no fire escape the landlord had padlocked the door. A few months into our lease we decided to break into the 3rd floor. We simply unscrewed all of the lock hardware and opened the door. There were several other bedrooms upstairs. One was painted from floor to ceiling with a psychedelic mural that was a cross between a black light poster and a scene from Heavy Metal. We also found a very nice pair of speakers, a solid lead 4 feet long rod, and a full-size rusty scythe. This became known as the 2nd cult room. It was a great house. When I was in high school I replaced my parents' wedding picture, which was large and framed and placed prominently as the centerpiece of our mantle, with a giant picture, courtesy of the internet, of a naked oily male model holding only a piece of metal over his junk which had an indent like his rock hard dong punched it. It took my parents days to notice, but when they did they thought it was so funny that they left it. They had people over often over the next 3 years, but not one person said anything about it. Everyone saw it. It was the centerpiece of our whole living room. But in rural Texas, people don't ask about things like that. So it went unmentioned. Who knows what conversations they were having when they got home. Just after we moved to Texas I had eye surgery which left me WTH a massive black eye and a big red hemorrhage spot on the eye white. Worked retail. Not one single person in the weeks it took it to heal asked what happened. I had some great stories made up too. Dated a girl in Japan and stayed at her parents' house one night. I looked in the closet of the room I was staying in and there was a black and white photo of a man with a vase below it. Apparently I was assigned to the room where they kept the family funerary urns. Just kicked it that night with her dead relatives. A 5-foot canvas oil painting of Daft Punk in Victorian style suits posing with a pillar across from the animal paintings from Hammer Isle. That's not weird, that's badass. You have been visited by the Holy Doggo. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.